support for the podcast comes from Lessen the Loads Laundry Solutions. Their business model is simple, but their impact is mighty. They are moms who help parents. Lessen the Loads is a woman-owned and operated laundry and organizational service. As moms themselves, they know there aren't enough hours in the day for everything to get done. That's why they're here to lessen your loads. Whether it's helping to get your spaces organized or tackling those piles of laundry once and for all, Lessen the Loads is there for you and your family. With pickup, drop-off, wash, dry, and fold, simply leave your laundry outside and they'll do the rest, bringing it back to you within 24 hours or sooner. If you'd like in-home fold and put away or in-home full service, Lessen the Loads is here to save the day. Yes, you heard that correctly. They will come to your home. With this service, your matched mom will come to your home, utilize your washer, dryer, and laundry products to fulfill your family's weekly laundry needs, including folding and putting away. Lessen the Loads also offers organization services, which include refolding, organizing drawers and closets, and pantries using their specialty method inspired by Marie Kondo. Lessen the Loads currently services the following Pennsylvania counties: Chester, Delaware, Berks, Bucks, Montgomery, and parts of Philadelphia, and they are growing every day. For more information or to book, visit lessentheloads.com. Hello, and welcome back to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner and Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Desper, founder of the Center for Confident Parenting, but mostly a mom who just seems to learn everything I need to know the hard way, and I'm on a mission to help others hear things sooner. Today's episode will be a little bit different since most of my guests are experts. I mean, we're all, experts on something. But today my guests are Kristen, full disclosure, my sister-in-law, and her sister, Elisha. So we're just going to have fun today, keep it real about day-to-day stuff in the challenges, the emotions of mothering and doing this kid thing. So thank you, ladies, for joining me and on a weekend at nap time. It's hard to coordinate three moms.
But we did it, so we're good.
We did it. We're good. Here. Whatever happens next is completely fine. So Kristen, you go first. Tell everyone that doesn't know you. Tell us about your kids. Tell us what you do day to day. Not all of us go, work a job outside the home. So what's your day to day like?
So mom of two girls, girl mom, yay. Oldest is 9, youngest is 2. Both very independent.
Big gaps in our family.
Yes. Very independent, strong young ladies already. Completely different personalities. So the age difference, while it's not as big of a deal most times, it's just how completely different they are as people already. So I was lucky enough to become a stay-at-home mom after our youngest was born. Just decided that working for someone else to just have them in daycare and just working to pay for daycare wasn't something that we could afford. So I was able, and gratefully enough, to support my sister with her newborn and start watching him for her, and just support her the way she supported me when I had Amelia, who is our oldest, and just be able to give back in that way to give her some comfort and security and know that he's being taken care of and no stranger danger situations.
Yeah. Don't be making me tear up. You only been on here for 1 minute and I'm about to tear up.
I should have said,
I'm trying to be professional. Okay,
keeping a clock on who cries or curses first. We'll see who wins.
Elisha curses probably.
Yes. So you said you watched your youngest and hers. Remind me how far apart they are, or close
they
together.
They are a week apart. We were actually due the same day, which is kind of crazy. Hers was planned, mine was not.
So
yeah, but we went through it together this time.
Yeah, so it's really like you have a 9-year-old that you send off to school every day, but then you have basically 2 babies, and you had them both when they were really little. So you had it was like you had twins almost for a portion of the day.
Yeah, I started watching them together probably at 3 months old, and they'll be 3 in September.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
So that was fun. Yeah, that's probably a whole episode in and of itself.
Oh my God, yeah. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Viv was exclusively breastfed, like she didn't take a bottle at all, whereas Gabe was exclusively bottle fed. And Elisha and I spent so much time on our maternity leaves together that our schedules were just so synced together that
Smart.
they needed to be changed at the same time. They wanted to be played with at the same time, fed at the same time. So I have some pictures where I'm like feeding Viv on one side and Gabe is just in a boppy, and I'm like feeding him and I'm just like, this is life. We're good. We can do this.
Yeah.
But
what a cool experience.
It's been a journey.
For everybody. It's just a cool, I'm sure there were really rough parts of it, but I just think that's it's awesome for all the reasons that you said. Like, I'm sure going back to work, Elisha, was difficult, and you can certainly speak to that when I get to you, but like, just to know, just to be able to leave him with your sister, like that's just so great, and have like a built-in playmate, and it's a cool experience for him. And then it just worked really for everybody. And the cost of childcare, I mean, everything's how much more expensive now than it was when you had them. So it's only gotten worse, right?
I think Amelia, and we were lucky to find ourselves in a similar situation with Amelia, because we had her in daycare for probably about, I want to say like 2 or 3 months, and then she got hand, foot, and mouth. So I was like, no, I can't. The anxiety that I feel sending her there
the first
every
of many
day.
things she was gonna get.
Yes, and that's where I cut it off. And we were lucky to find a family friend who you've met, that was able to kind of do the same thing for us in that situation, when it worked with like our retail hours and crazy flexible schedule.
I mean, I feel like people are going to have to do more of this. If inflation keeps going and childcare keeps getting crazy, like you're going to have to get really creative. So we solved this for you parents today. Just have a baby at the exact same time as a sibling who doesn't
Listen.
work outside the home. I feel like this is pretty specific. You might not be able to take that tip and run with it, but that's okay. Think outside the box is the point.
But I think it works in that way, but I also think it's hard in this day and age, and it's something that Elisha and I have talked about before, is like you don't really create friends past a certain point in adulthood. Like it's just a very strange thing of like, I want to be friends. I think Elisha does a better job of it than I do. She's like friends with everybody, where I'm just kind of like, I'm set in my ways, have my own circle. So I think if people were more comfortable in that way and like had a bigger circle to support them like we have, I think it would be a lot easier. But childcare,
I mean, it's that village thing. Like you don't have one, and even when you want to create one, you can't always find the people to put in it or the resources.
Exactly.
Listen, and speaking about building,
it's your turn anyway. Tell us about your days.
I'll start talking now.
But before I do introduce myself, I guess, but the building a village. So when Kristen and I were on maternity leave together, we hung out all the time. But I was like, I need other mom friends, because the only person I know with a kid his age is Kristen. And so like I joined the Peanut app and was like, I'm just talking to random women. How old is your kids? Are we a match? And it's literally like Tinder.
People? No, move on.
Yes. No, but that's literally what it is. It's like Tinder for moms. It was the strangest experience, because I never actually did Tinder. But I was like, yes. And I've actually found a couple people that I still talk to here and there and check in on their kids. And we've like met up for play dates and stuff. So it was cool.
Yep. One of my closest friends to this day, the one who married us actually, we met through my efforts of like, I need to meet people who have kids. All my friends up to that point were way ahead of me. So they didn't have the kind of kid that I had, by which I mean very high need, intense, exhausting, and also wonderful. So I just needed people who got it. And I signed up for classes like Mommy and Me Swimming, and we met there, and it was amazing. But there were a lot of like, I don't need to see that person again instances before that. Like we met up at the library, and I was like, I cannot carry a conversation.
I cannot mommy date you anymore. I'm sorry, move on.
Which actually says a lot, because like you guys know me, I could get along with, I can roll in any situation. I'll find anything to talk about. Like I can just be. But I was like, no, this is not. We're not having a second date. It's not
I love it.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
So I guess I should
Okay, so
actually
yes,
tell people me.
it is. Introduce yourself.
So I'm Elisha. I go by Eli since I was really young. I'm a middle school English teacher, send prayers and coffee. This is my 7th year teaching. And I have a master's degree and more certifications than God. And I decided also to
Yeah,
add
we like
more
to collect our
certifications.
certifications.
Yes, I do. I'm actually, speaking of that, I'm adding my financial advising certifications.
That's
I got my first
awesome. I
license
saw
with the
that.
state. It hit,
Hey,
so I'm really
it's good
excited
to
about that.
diversify your skills in case you
Listen,
ever want to get out of teaching.
Ooh,
Just like
listen. The
yesterday.
way that these current middle schoolers are,
Yeah,
I'm
tell me
I'm
about
very
it.
not prepared. I'm not prepared for my son to be a middle
You
schooler.
got to
I'm
get
gonna tell
out
you
of it
that.
before you have your own middle schooler. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
I can't.
You can't do that all day and do that all night and weekend. It's not going to work.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that's kind of a little bit about me. So yeah,
Yep.
so Kristen is the stay-at-home person, and I'm the person that runs away and then comes back after dealing with
Right?
other people's children to deal with my own.
And I have some questions surrounding that, but we'll come back to that in a minute. So while we're on you, Elisha, so Gabe is your first.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I was supposed to say his name, but it's out there now.
That's
What was the most challenging thing when you first brought him home? Like if a new or expecting mom is listening to this, they'll be like, oh, what was hard?
So okay, so I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it's the thing I always come back to. For me, it was breastfeeding. So I came from a family. My mom breastfed and didn't have issues. Kristen, when she was with Amelia, she didn't have any issues, and I was trying, and it wasn't working for me and Gabe. Wasn't working. We were both middle of the night. We were crying, like I was hysterically crying because I'd been convinced that that's how I had to feed him. And thank God I had taken a webinar breastfeeding class, so I knew enough in the hospital to ask, like, hey, can I get a breast pump so we can, do it that way?
Get things started.
And I actually found a lactation consultant, I think through Nicole, who's a part of your group, who I did like a class with her.
Yep.
And she was like, hey, a fed baby is a better baby, and we need you to be healthy, mom, mentally and physically and emotionally. Do you know that you can just exclusively pump? She was like, well, how much are you pumping, in between? And I was like, I'm at like 3 or 4 ounces. She said, pause, you're in 3 or 4 ounces in the first week? I said, yeah. She said, yeah, no, we're done with the breastfeeding.
And
She
in
was
between?
Like, yeah. She said, we're done with that. He'll take the bottle. I said, yeah, he'll scarf the bottle down. She said, no. So I was able to exclusively breastfeed, and I still call that breastfeeding because it's still breast milk.
Absolutely.
So I was able to pump for 10 months.
And look, even if it wasn't,
Yep.
like the points remain of like, you have to protect your sanity. There's just so many things to think about. And, there's just so much to think about.
Yeah.
I wish if I had been a little less militant, and I am a breastfeeding supporter. Let me just clarify. I'm even a lactation consultant. Not an IBCLC, the low one where you take a 1-week class, not years and years. But to say like, I'm all for it. But I'm really all for whatever. I think I would have just had a different newborn experience if I hadn't been so gung-ho about breast is best versus like sanity and having your baby be fed, and nobody could help me because I was breastfeeding and all that stuff. So
I hope
it's
Chris
just
is
not
okay
black
with
and
me
white.
sharing.
Yeah.
I hope Chris is okay with me sharing this part of it.
No, go. Yeah, I know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
So it got so rough for me that there was a time, and I will tear up. See, I am gonna be the first one to cry, where I was trying to breastfeed him and I couldn't. And I was trying to pump because he was crying and I knew he was hungry. And Kristen was like, do you want me to try? Because we were breastfeeding at the same time. Like it got to the point that I didn't even care if it was my breast, as long as that's what it was.
Just feed this baby, please. Yeah.
And so that's when actually Kristen was like, Leash, it's not you. Like he's not latching. And she, she was breastfeeding her second. And she was like, it's not you. It's not you. Right. Like you got to talk to somebody. There's something else going on. So like I said, that was the hardest thing for me. And if I can have any mom listen to this, or a partner of a mom take something away, a fed baby is the best baby. And there are so many options with how to feed a baby. Like I did not know how many options and combinations there were, because I felt like it was either formula or it was direct breast. I didn't know there was an in between or a different.
There's definitely in between, and there's even in between with the goal of getting baby back to the breast full time. Now that's not always where everyone wants to take it, but that is an option. It's not like there's so much about this that we tend to make like either or, all or nothing. It's ideal or it's tragic, and there's like there's a whole world in between those two things I've said on here before. And I'm
Yeah.
saying that like I get it. I am an all or nothing thinker. I'm working on it. But I think breastfeeding is just one of those, it can't be an all or nothing scenario. Like really nothing about parenting can be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was hard.
For
And just
me,
another good
it was more
example.
so, wasn't even like,
Yeah,
like
go for it.
breast is best. It was breast was least expensive. Um,
Also a good
so,
point.
but that was a really big thing. And when Viv was born,
I mean,
that's
you had to
when
afford
they were
daycare,
going,
so it had to...
yeah. But we were going through the formula shortage in the
Yes.
country. So that just gave me
Yeah.
such anxiety of, oh my God, if I don't want to do this, if I don't want to put my body through this again, like I can't even feed her that way.
Yep.
So I might as well. So my experience with breastfeeding the second time was definitely a lot more stressful, because she didn't eat the way they like teach you in the hospital, like every few hours for this amount of time. It was shorter amount of times for multiple more times a day. So there was probably like,
so it's just all
12,
you were doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
It like, I just felt like a milkmaid from all those years ago, the way they used to talk about it. And the experience with her just wasn't as great as it was with Amelia, I would say. But the moment Elisha talked about with Gabe, the one thing he had is his top lip was protruding more than his bottom lip. So he just couldn't get that motion to latch on
There's so
the way
many
you
complicated
normally
mechanics
would.
involved in latching, just latching. And then there's the whole transfer of the milk. And then the swallowing, like we just don't, unless you study it, you don't know that there's so much involved. And if one tiny thing goes wrong, it could be brutal for everybody.
Yeah. And it wasn't for lack of effort on his part or Alicia's part either. It just wasn't the connection there. But as we know, Gabe is already a big boy, so he definitely ate fine.
And we are fortunate to have options. So why not use them? Kristen, while we're on you, was that your most challenging thing? Was that it was just more challenging the second time, which sometimes people have in reverse?
No, honestly, for Amelia, I was really young. I was pretty much a baby myself. I was 23. So I think it was just the lack of self-confidence and belief, and am I prepared to do this? My whole life is about to change, because in your early 20s, you're out living your life without a care in the world, responsibility.
It's a big contrast.
So I went through a really hard time, probably that first year where the bonding wasn't happening. Probably some form of undiagnosed postpartum depression was probably the toughest part, because you love this tiny human that you created, and like one side I was thankful that she was here and that she was healthy, and in all instances she definitely saved my life from a downward spiral that I was on. So I am thankful for her 100%, but it was definitely the beginning of me losing myself and parts of myself, even though it was definitely not great parts of myself. But the beginning of that chipping away at yourself to make sure that you're being the most for them, but then forgetting about you.
Which we experience at any age. I think it just, it looks a little different, like what you're giving, what's being chipped away at, and what's left.
Yeah.
Do you think, so for both of you, but Kristen, will stay on you first. Did people try to explain that that's how it was going to feel? And that didn't make a difference, right? Or did no one tell you, and maybe if someone had told you, it would have felt less hard?
Honestly, I don't know, because she was such a surprise that it was just such a shock. And like, as you know, I didn't find out I was pregnant with her till I was like 5 months pregnant. And for all of those that are going to be like, how did you not know? Okay. But I dealt with ovarian cysts and different things from a young age. So I was never
chalked it up to other stuff.
I was never regular to begin with, so it didn't occur to me that could be the possibility.
For sure.
And I found out 2 days after my 23rd birthday that I was pregnant with her. But I think everyone was just so in shock and not even like a bad shock, but more so that there's not a lot of time before she gets here, that like the focus
Right.
was just on
Less time to
what do we
prepare.
do, how can people support us, what do you need, like that kind of thing, that it wasn't in a bad way. People didn't really focus on how I was feeling. I think your brother, like without him, I don't think I would have made it. Because he knew what was going on without actually having to say words. He kind of just let me be and took a lot of the grunt work of that first year. If I wasn't comfortable doing something, he would kind of just get up and say, "All right, I got it. Don't worry about it."
Which is what makes a good team, right?
Yeah, but it was also those moments of, why am I feeling like this? Why can't I connect with her? Like those moments that just kind of drug it out a little bit more, I think.
Sure.
Plus, in the first couple years, babies don't really do very much. So that's kind of what I was waiting on in the beginning as a parent, of like being able to, the communication and being able to do more, like just that back and forth relationship when they finally become independent, and like the walking and stuff like that starts.
Yeah.
While it's terrible, it's also amazing. But as a parent, as it makes me sad to see those moments come, it made me excited with Amelia, that I was starting to feel more in my groove by the time she started becoming a little bit more independent. But with Viv, all she did was cry the first 3 months. I was like, I regret everything. This was a mistake.
Except
was
when?
a mistake. Except for when Aunt Erica came over and she slept on her for like 3 hours. And I said, you can never leave.
Thank you.
But
the
that
one time.
Yes, the one time. It was just so drastically different from Amelia. Amelia was such a great baby. Like, you held her, she ate, she went to the bathroom, she went back to sleep. Like, that was
I think
the
that is
cycle.
so helpful for parents to hear, if they're expecting, whether it's like their first, their second, their seventh, I don't care. Like, the whole nature nurture debate, it's both. Some of your kids are going to have similarities because that's genetic, right? And some of it's going to be the nurture of, like, they're growing up in a different, obviously your younger one, the family's different, because you already have an older one. They're not all the same. You could have a really easy kid followed by a really tough one, or, vice versa. And it's not you. I guess maybe that's the name of this episode. It's not you.
They did this to you.
Right? So this is an unprepared question, Kristen. Hopefully you'll be okay with it. If a parent is expecting right now, like, what, or maybe they just had their baby and they're experiencing that whole, like, I don't feel particularly excited or bonded or whatever. Like, what would you, if you had to say one sentence coming from going through that, what would you say to them?
I guess it would
Maybe
be...
I stole it. It's not you.
No, not that. I guess I would say, take it day by day, take it hour by hour. Take the good moments when you can. The bad moments are going to come, but it'll prepare you for down the road when they're older teenagers and the bad times have just changed in a way.
Right. Like, it didn't
last. Always, it won't last. It's not always going to be like this.
Yeah.
And I think with Viv, her colic just came from just wanting to eat all the time for no apparent reason, because she was one also that didn't take a pacifier. So
she's a
there
tiny
were many...
little girl like me. We need to eat often.
Yes. So I think it would be that, just one step at a time. And it's not always a magical ride in the beginning with the baby that they make it seem like in the movies and on TV. It's not like that all the time. And it's okay for it to not be like that.
It's not always awesome. You're not going to love every minute. You don't have to savor every second. You can be like, this sucks. I love you right now if I don't like you. If that's that's more real. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to add to that too. So, before I had Gabe for several years, I was diagnosed with anxiety. Like, I was medicated. I got my help. I got better. I went off of it. I got pregnant. Because I was able to see what was going on with Kristen, when I was in the hospital, I was able to recognize certain signs in myself with my postpartum anxiety, which, again, didn't know was a thing.
Right.
But I was able to go, hey, something's not right. I need help. And so I was able to, like, tell the doctors, like, hey, Here's
Yep.
what I'm going through. What am I supposed to do? Can we set it up so I can get back on my medication before I leave? And I think that, like you kind of asked, did anybody tell you? No. And I think that's one of my biggest issues is that we make everything seem like it's going to be the movie. So then when someone does feel like, hey, I'm not connecting with my baby, or hey, why am I panicking like this? You feel like you're not normal, quote unquote. But you are.
Whatever that is.
You're
Yeah.
actually 100%
It's so normal.
right. But you don't know that because nobody talks about it.
Well,
and so
especially
I think,
now, like when I had mine, Facebook was just like I was learning how to use Facebook when he was a newborn. So that's how old I am. So I don't feel like I felt or experienced what people feel today of like this curated life of like, look at my perfect baby. That might be the only moment your kid wasn't screaming in 24 hours. So of course you're going to snap that, but everyone's going to see that and be like, look at this baby happy all the time. This mom just loving every minute. That's got to be really demoralizing for people.
Yeah.
In
And
this
that
day
is
and
funny
age.
because her and I have also had a conversation about how my Instagram stories and that kind of stuff, it's never curated like that. I will always get a video of them like standing on their head or like screaming at me or like looking at me eating a cupcake and just like scowling at me or doing sign language at me to get them more food. Like, no, it's not always like that. They're not always like, hi.
I love that.
Bye.
And your blog, you keep it very real too. I'll make sure to link to that in the description. So Elisha, given the struggles you just mentioned, postpartum anxiety, the breastfeeding, if I was having my first baby tomorrow, what would you try to get across to me to avoid someone hitting what you hit so hard?
I would say it's okay to not be okay and then ask for help. This is the one time in your life where I think people want to overly help you. It might not always be the kind of help that you want. It might always be the advice that you want, right? But there's something about like you just bringing life into the world where people want to be in your face. So take advantage of the fact that people want to be in your face, right? Ask for help. There are doctors, there are groups, there are so many resources out there, both low cost, free, you know, all of these things. It's okay to not be okay, and then ask for help.
And because I'm someone who at that time would not ask for help and also would not accept it when it was offered for various reasons, my own superwoman syndrome, because my kid was really tough and I didn't want to put that on anybody else. I would say if you're the helper versus the new parent, don't try to not frame it like, what can I do for you? Do you need me to do anything? Like just whatever, grab the baby, throw in the laundry, whatever you see that can be done, because not everybody's going to even know what they need or feel comfortable saying it. I like to say to people like, hey, I'm stopping at the store for stuff for me on the way. What can I pick up for you? Because look,
that's me too.
If you just say like, oh, can I stop at the store for you? Most of us aren't going to say yes. We feel like we're inconveniencing someone. So like, just know that not everyone can ask for and accept help, and just find a way around it. Do it anyway. Yeah. Now I know, again, I'm going totally off script. Elisha, a lot of people who are proponents of breastfeeding would say, I don't want to say to a mom, you know, fed is best, because then from the start, we're setting this expectation of like, hey, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, like whatever. If someone had said that to you before he arrived or like early on when you were struggling, would you have automatically been like, okay, well, this isn't important to me anymore? Like, I just want to kind of demystify that whole, it's not either or. It's not like we have to say, we would have still given it a good shot, right? Like we don't have to be afraid that people are just going to not even try.
Not at all. So again, because I was dealing with anxiety and hormones and a family of women that did not have an issue, I was internalizing it as this is my fault. So if somebody said to me, a fed baby is the best baby, I would have been like, I think it would have released some of the pressure and the tension. Right.
Which does not help you nail it if you're really trying.
Yeah, not at all. And again, I knew that my production wasn't an issue. In under 24 hours, I was producing 1.5 ounces every time I pumped. I knew production wasn't a problem.
Right. Well, oversupply can be a problem too. That's what we have.
Yeah.
That's why
That's what I had.
Right? Look, we have big girls. Well, not me compared to you, but you know.
Yes.
We have big girls. We make a lot of milk. That's all.
Well, with
But
Viv,
that isn't always a dream. It can be a big challenge.
yeah, with Viv, I actually did. And that was the one thing that stressed me out in the hospital with her is I was comparing my experience with Amelia in the hospital to how it would be with her. And with COVID coming off of like the end stages
Yeah.
of everything, she was in the room with us all the time unless they had to take her for testing,
Right.
which Amelia, it was like they only brought her in unless she needed to be fed.
You're like, when
So
am I supposed to recover and rest? Are you
Yes.
taking this, baby?
So that was a struggle. But with Viv, I didn't get my supply right away. So I was immediately stressed. And in the hospital, I didn't know that they had like the little like newborn bottles to like feed them and supplement. Like I had no idea. So she lost like a pound or something like that over the course that we were in the hospital. So I'm freaking out. We have to come back in for like that emergency scheduled appointment like 2 days after to like check her weight and everything. So I had to do like marathon pumping for like 48 hours where I was up every hour pumping for 20 minutes to like get my supply in. And it probably took about a full week before I was able to. So that for me, breastfeeding worked, but with Viv, it was more of a struggle. But I also think it's because my body was a little bit older. They had already been worked in a certain way that they weren't used to this time. So that was definitely stressful for me the second time around with breastfeeding.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's jump to today. Kristen, we'll start with you. So they're 9 and, oh my God, 2.
2.
9 and 2, right? Okay, 9 and 2. I know
Let's
I
say
didn't make
19
it.
and 12
I feel like
already.
I didn't make it to the last party, so I was like, wait, am I forgetting one? 9 and 2. So what is the most challenging aspect of parenting now? You're experienced. You're not new to this. They're older, but I'm sure it's not easy.
I would say switching between the way you parent between the two kids on a whim because of the age difference. Amelia is starting to come into that preteen attitude stage where
hold on. I'm going to stop you there. She was born with the preteen. I mean, she's got the eyes. She's got.
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
I don't know where she gets it from. It's totally not me.
I hear you that it's getting to a different level, but if we're keeping it honest, she had it from the get-go.
Yeah, but I also don't think it was an attitude when she was younger. I think it just took people like aback at how direct she was with what she wanted.
Yes.
So, but it drives me absolutely insane now.
Yeah.
It is simply saying, hey, it's time to take a shower. You smell like a hoagie. It's a life-altering occasion. Like, I've ruined her life. I've ruined her entire day. No,
Isn't it
I don't
funny
like
that the things kids hate are the things we would like love to have time, like a nice hot shower and everyone leaves you alone and you're by yourself and you can listen to something, or like, hey, we're going to go to sleep. You get to like, all you have to do is sleep. And kids are like, yeah, I wish we could. That's one of those things that you can't explain until you get there.
Yes. And at this point, it's how I respond to her having a moment like that is going to be different of how I respond to Viv not sitting down when I ask her to eat or something like that.
Right.
And I will admit that I am a very reactive parent when I've repeated myself multiple times. Like I think
we all are.
I have no patience, and it's something that I've definitely had to work on with Amelia. And if she sees me like closing my eyes for a second and breathing deeply, she's already starting to be like, I'm sorry that I spoke to you like that, Mom. I'll just go do it. Like just having that moment to where I'm not reaching what I like to call their level of crazy.
Right.
And
I used to say to mine, I feel like I'm about to start yelling. Is there anything you can think that you can do to help me not start yelling?
And then they look at you like, why are you yelling? I'm not doing anything. What do you mean you're not doing anything? But I think that's probably the most challenging part now is when they're both having their moments at the same time and both need the attention. And then it just kind
something
of
different.
spirals from there, that Viv is wanting to play with a toy, Amelia's needing help with homework, then they're getting frustrated that I can't be two places at once. And then I'm like, I can't physically do this.
Right.
So I need you to do X, Y, and Z, and I need you to do X, Y, and Z so I can do this now. But it's just kind of breaking it down in that way, and how I react in those moments of when it's the double parenting, I guess you could say, when they're
Yep.
together, because they
That
just
makes
want
sense.
your attention all the time at
That
the
makes
same
sense.
time.
Yep.
And it doesn't occur to them that can't happen.
Yeah. And like, you're probably used to that because you had the two babies at the same time, but I'm
Oh, yeah.
imagining because of the age, like you're having to be two different moms in the same moment,
Yeah.
not just hands wise, but like strategy wise. Like, how do you need me
Yeah.
to talk to you, and what do you need me to do? That's I did not experience that being the parent of one, but I get it. Elisha, how about you? What's most challenging these days?
So Kristen and I were just talking about this earlier because she's seeing it on and off for like the last 6 months with Gabe. He's in like this hitting phase, which like being hit is a severe trigger for me. So I decided like really early on, like I didn't want to spank or like put my hands on him in any way. But my gut reaction when Kristen talks about being reactive, like the second he hits me, like I want to spank him.
That's
And
it. That's in your
so-
genes. I think
Yeah,
it comes.
like
Yeah.
we got West Virginia roots. Like they say go get a switch. Like they're not playing with you.
No, not
But I
at
knew
all.
that's
Yeah.
not what I wanted for my son. And it's not like this is not a knock on anybody that's how you
Sure.
parent, right?
Yeah.
But it's just not what I wanted. And so for me, the hardest part is, okay, so what do I do? Because you obviously can't keep hitting me. So like I've tried a couple of different things. So like I'll put him in timeout repeatedly, like get your space for me. But then there's other, research and things that I've done where I'm like, okay, well, if he swats at me, is it worth me pulling him in close to me to be like, hey,
Time
you're
in,
feeling
right?
this emotion. Like, you're feeling this emotion, buddy. It's
Yeah.
okay to be angry. It's not okay for you to hit me. So if
Yep.
you need me physically, I'm here, but you can't keep hitting on me.
We
And so
are
it-
differing at this at the moment, because I'm definitely you're going to go away from me because you're not going to put your hands on me. So yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Well, that was
something.
actually my next question. So that's a good segue. If it, like, you both have two very different personalities, like we said, one's going to cry, one's going to curse, like just you're totally different people, even though you work so well together. So Elisha, while we're on you, like, how would you describe your parenting style? What's different about it from Kristen?
So I think
Answer
it's
carefully.
listen.
Answer, choose your words wisely.
So for me, I think it's that even in my teaching, right? Like my students will tell you too, I'm very strict about a few things. Everything else, I'm willing to talk, negotiate, research, learn, and develop. Right? So like
So you
respect
have like
for
some
me.
deal breakers.
Yeah, like respect for me, which is why like this hitting thing is so
Right.
hard. There's certain things where like I will not play with you on, and you will get a very different 69th Street version of Eli in that. But
Yeah.
I lean more towards the responsive parenting and trying to give kids words through their emotions. And I've been doing, research on homeschooling and all of those different methods and philosophies. And so for me, I think Kristen and I differ in this is my first, she's on her second, right? So she's had some tried and true.
That's an automatic difference in style, I think.
But I also think because I approach it with the mindset of like education in my brain and not just who is he now, but who do I want him to be as a man? Right? Like that's how I'm approaching it. And so I think about like, okay, I want him to have words for his emotions because we didn't have those. We had like mad, angry, sad, and then we were done. I want him to have more than that.
Yeah,
and so
there's like,
I think
there's so many. I can't even, like, I just listen to a book about this and I was like, oh, I've never even used that word as a label for emotion.
Right. So I think that's me and Kristen's biggest thing is that like I have
emotional intelligence not so big when we were growing up, and I'm a little past you guys, but still. Well, and being a teacher, I don't know if it's your personality or your teaching experience. You're the more like scheduled, structured one. Like you want things to happen a certain time, whereas Kristen, I think you're more like easy breezy with it.
Yeah,
no, that's personality, ma'am. That was me at birth. That
was always you. Okay.
Yeah,
see, I didn't know you long before that. So
yeah. No, this was
I think with them and with how I've kind of had to, like, I guess, co-parent or co-sister Gabe at this point.
Yeah.
With Elisha, I've been more thoughtful about at least like a loose schedule when it comes to like nap times, as you know,
Right.
and that kind of thing, and figuring that stuff out. I am more scheduled, but honestly, it just depends on what I'm doing. When it comes to when I was working more of a corporate job, yes, I was more scheduled, but like things like day to
I'm guessing
day,
you would do it more, Kristen, for like survival and function, whereas Alicia, you'd probably do it more for like to keep your anxiety at bay.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Which is
And
like that's a
even
big difference.
what's interesting is, so I know we mentioned earlier, like Chris and I kind of reversed roles. So when Amelia was born and her and Mike were working like the crazy jobs and crazy schedules, Sean and I had Amelia from like Sunday morning until Tuesday night. She stayed with us. Like we dropped her off
Right.
at the daycare or at my girlfriend's house who was watching her at the time. Like we picked her up. And so I noticed very early that Amelia was also schedule regimented and needed to know what was happening, which I was like, sweet, this works for me. I love a schedule. But what's crazy is her schedule, even when she comes to spend the night, is still very much what it was when she was 2.
Yeah.
And so she'll be like, oh, okay, Aunt Alicia, we're having dinner. What are we having for snack? Right? And me and her are talking it out. And Kristen heard this. And she was like, so this is why my daughter wants to know what we're having for dinner at breakfast time? And I was like,
I'm not even there yet.
It's literally the worst.
And I'm like,
or like
I'm
she
so
wakes
sorry.
up and it's
Like,
like,
this is
what can
not
I have for
Alicia's house.
snack? Yeah, she's like, what can I have for snack after dinner? It is 8 a.m. Like, what?
Right?
Why are we there? I haven't even finished my cup
Some
of coffee
people
yet.
plan their days based on food, snacks, beverages. This is a big debate in our house. Yeah. But see, I'm not the one who does the cooking, so I don't feel like I need to think about it. I also don't want to think about it. It's something that's been taken off my plate and I'm grateful for it. So I'm like, don't talk to me at 8 a.m. about what you're doing for dinner. Just surprise me with it.
Absolutely not.
Yep. Kristen, did you want to say more about how you differ? Or did we cover that?
I think we're actually more similar than we think, but I think I'm not all in on gentle parenting. Personally, for me, I don't feel like it works 100% for our household.
That's what I was going to say. Do you feel like that's contingent on the kids you're using it with? Like, that's my thought on it.
I do.
It's just not all styles of kids respond to gentle parenting the same way.
Yes, and I think it's also the parent that's trying to perform that style of parenting. I'm a very direct, to the point person. I don't like having to repeat myself. So I think that's the biggest difference of the gentle parenting. I'm not going to ask Amelia, oh, please don't stand on your head on the couch. You're going to fall off and get a boo-boo. If I've had to ask you more than 3 times, you're getting you need to sit down. You need to get off the couch before you unalive yourself. Like, I'm not saying it again. So I think it's definitely changed for Amelia since I've had Viv, because again, that differing of how to discipline when they're doing certain things, because one is 9 and one is 2. And I think it's just going to continue to evolve as they get over, but we're definitely on a downward spiral of Amelia changing as a kid. So the parenting style has to change. And I think that's something we also don't talk about as parents, that the style changes as you're getting older and as the kid gets older. It's not always going to stay the same. If you have multiple kids, it's not going to be the same for multiple kids. And then throwing Gabe in the mix there too, it's kind of like parenting 3 kids at the same time. I hope Alicia doesn't mind me saying this, that again, like, we had to co-parent at one point in our styles because she could see I was getting tired, and I'm, unlike her, am not the type to ask for help. Even if I need it, I will suffer on that mountain all by myself and just trudge through and figure it out.
Mothering.
And
I've done it.
But as you know, I recommended you to Elisha for Gabe when it came to sleeping, because at 3 months old, he should not be awake all day long. And I was just like, am I doing something wrong? Anything like that. And we took your earlier class with Amelia. So over almost 10 years ago that we consulted with you, and it didn't even occur to me, like, wake windows.
Right.
So it was something of like re-educating myself in that
You
way.
always forget.
And
I mean, if we didn't forget, we wouldn't go on to do it over and over and over.
yes.
That was part of why I couldn't. I did not forget it, how hard it was. I don't think you're meant to remember. It's just like you have to get re-educated every time, and because they are so different from each other. So what worked great with your first one in terms of schedule, maybe your second one's not, like they didn't read that book. Yeah, that's a good point. It's awesome that you've been able to. I mean, it's sort of like what would happen in a couple situation, right? A marriage
Yeah.
or whatever, is like, this is my style, but to make this work, we both have to like kind of compromise. So your arrangement is cool, and the fact that you've been able to do that is cool. Another big difference is how much time you get with the kids, right? So Elisha, you're a teacher, you are with other people's kids all day, and then come home to your own. Or as Kristen, you're a work at home mom, whatever we want to call it, watching, yours and then your nephew. So you rarely get, I'm sure, time to yourself. So is that like, do you each look at the other situation and it's like a grass is always greener thing, where you're like, wow, I wish I could stay home all day, or I wish I could go to a job outside the home all day? Or are you like loving where you each are? Like, how does that work? I guess, Elisha, you're first, I think. I don't know. I switched it. We'll say Alicia's first.
No, you're fine.
So I would by no means say the grass is greener. When I come to Kristen's house to grab Gabe, and I'm like, hey, yo, why are y'all running in circles? Why y'all don't need no more goldfish? Sit down somewhere. Where are your socks? You're wearing an apron on your head. Like, what is happening, 2-year-olds? So I wouldn't say it's greener by any means. What I will say is it's difficult for me to leave Gabe still, right? And this is one thing that people are like, oh, it'll get easier. Nonsense. My son is now able to cry and say, no, mom, stay, don't go.
Pull on the heartstrings.
And before, like, yeah, it was hard for me because he was little, but he had no recollection that I was leaving, really, right? At least not that he could communicate. Yeah. But now he can. And so that part's really hard for me. And I will say, if I did not have Kristen for him to go to, I think that we would have had a very different conversation, Sean and I, about what we were going to do, as far as when he was born. And it's also, I mean, it is playing a major role in me considering homeschooling and really wanting to move forward with that, because I'm at least able to tell myself, okay, I'm working for these next few years, I'm teaching other people's children, but it's no longer sitting right with me that, hey, I'm going to be educating by the time Gabe is 5. I will probably work with 700 plus students that are other people's kids to then keep sending him to somebody else to raise. Right. No. And Kristen is 100% co-parenting and helping me raise my son. And I think that whether you're sending them to daycare, whether you're sending them away from you for 8 to 10 hours a day.
That's a long time.
Somebody else is helping you raise your kid. Yeah. And
it might not be the way you want them to be co-parenting, helping you raise your kid.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a follow-up, and we'll switch back to Kristen. So it sounds like there's mom guilt or whatever you'd want to, frame it as. Like, what do you do with that? Where do you put it? How do you make yourself feel better about it? Because you can't right now say, I'm just not going to work.
Yep. So I'm looking for,
or do you
other avenues.
You say you don't.
But so it is something that it's been a constant process. But one thing, like a tangible thing, is instead of me before, I was like waking Gabe up 10 minutes before we had to go in the morning, just so I could like quickly get him dressed, change his butt, give him his milk, and we would go, right? 10 minutes. And I was like, okay, so I'm struggling with time with you on the back end, because by the time I get you, we get home and you have dinner. It's time for you to go to bed.
Right.
So now I wake him up 25, 30 minutes before we have to go. I give him his milk. We sit on the couch and we snuggle and we watch the news. My son is almost 3 and loves the news. We watch the news and I just tell him that I love him and that I appreciate him and that I sit there and I smell his hair, right? Like I love on him in the morning. So then that way, when I'm gone all day, he at least knew from the time he woke up, mom loves me.
And it's a trade-off, right? Because that means, I would think, 2 things. You both have to get your day started earlier. So that's a little bit of a sacrifice.
Yep.
But then you get something back out of it. And you probably have less time to do you in the morning. Right. But it feels like a worthwhile
100%, because it sets us both up. And I also feel like when I was just dropping him off at Kristen's, I feel like he was still like in the process of like waking up and just like getting himself
Which
together.
does not make that
And
any
then
easier.
comes here and is a raging lunatic.
Yeah, so it made it better for you too.
But
That's
yeah,
great.
it's like time to like wake up and adjust. And so now it's like, hey, bud, go get your shoes. We're gonna go see Aunt Chris, and he's like taking off running
right.
to go grab his
You
shoes.
filled
so
it.
he
You
can
filled your
go.
cups basically, and that gets you through the day. You ride on
Yep.
that for the day.
So it doesn't change
sounds
that I feel guilty,
right.
but at least it gives us both some good positive time in the morning.
Right.
So then that we can, okay, we're going to be apart for a little while, and then I'll see you tonight, and we can do the same snuggles
And
and
trust
like,
me,
you know,
at some point, bedtime will creep so late that you'll have none of your own time in the evening, and you'll be wishing they still went to bed at that early time. My kid stays up. I'm falling asleep when my kid is now like still working toward falling asleep. There's no us evening or my evening anymore. And it sounds like you're focusing too on like quality over quantity. We get these
Absolutely.
25 minutes. I'm just going to like focus. That's all I'm doing in those 25 minutes, which might even be more valuable to you both than like we're together in the morning, but we're running around getting ready.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. So Kristen, you have the total opposite. Home all day, 2 2-year-olds. That's assuming the 9-year-old's in school, but there are summers, and we all know school is like, you know, there's like non-school days than there are
trickle
school
snow.
days.
Yeah.
Which is great if you're a teacher, not if you're a parent relying on the school schedule. So what is that a grass is greener? Or are you like, man, it would be so nice to stand by the water cooler and have grown-up conversations and wear a dress, you know, a shirt with like buttons or whatever.
I would say in the aspect of getting to talk to adults and doing adult things, yes. But going out and working for someone else in the corporate world, no. Mm-hmm. I think Viv helped me realize in that way that I just didn't want to work for someone else because it was not the quality of life I wanted for myself or my kids. Because when Amelia was really small, we worked for like a big box company distribution side. And we worked Sunday through Wednesday, 12 to 16 hours every single day.
I remember.
You would get there, the sun was down. You would leave, the sun was still down.
That's about demoralizing.
Yeah, so there was just a quality of life that I didn't want to repeat for Viv that I feel guilty about for Amelia. And a lot of the thing, that's where my mom guilt, I guess, comes in now.
Okay.
Is that there's so many things that I missed out on at this age with Amelia just because I was working to provide for her, but I wasn't providing in that way of being mindful of those moments. But the only other thing too, I think the downside is it's made me realize that I am 100% overstimulated by touch. And with toddlers, they want to touch you and climb on you all the time. Yep. Like if they could crawl under your skin, they would.
Right.
So it's been difficult more so for Gabe because he is much more needs that constant like affirmation of like, oh, you're still here. Okay, I'm going to go off. Or just wants to snuggle all the time. And I'm not
like totally not old enough to understand like boundaries. I used to tell mine, like, there's a bubble. Put a bubble around mommy. Don't touch my bubble. And then he'd go like this. Is that your bubble?
Pretty much. And then there's me. So talking about how we're different, right? I apologize to Chris. And what would you say, Chris? Probably like once a week when it comes to you being stretched out, because I am 100%. You could sit and hold my hand for 4 days and I'm cool with it. Like I apologize all the time. I'm like, this is one of those nature versus nurture. I'm real sorry that my nature gave him my touchy gene because, you know, we grew up and I would like jump on both of my siblings to hug them and just like lay on top of them. Right. So I apologize profusely to her now because I'm like, I'm real sorry.
Yeah.
Bad.
Better up your threshold for touching.
Right. Well, it's not
even as a parent of a teenager, they won't want anything to do with you down the road.
And it's not even that it's him wanting to touch me, I guess, per se. It's just not wanting that physical touch for a purpose. Like he will literally just come up and put his hand on my face and then just walk away. What? Why?
What is that?
What? Why? But it'll happen like over and over and over again for like 30 minutes straight. Like, what do you need? So like the boundary I've kind of set with him is like, if you don't need something, you're not hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you're not dead, dying, or bleeding. You're
Right.
fine. You can sit next to me on the couch. Like, you don't have to be right on top of me to like
Yeah.
get that comfort.
Yep.
So that's been a struggle for him. And then there's Viv, who's the complete opposite, who will just go over and put on her little chef's hat to her heart's content and cook all the food that she can on her play kitchen and be fine. And that was one way. Her and Amelia were similar. So that was something I struggled with between my own and with Gabe, is because they were both wildly independent. And I think it's more so because we let them know that they're fine. If you need us and really need us, yes, come over and be in my bubble. But if you're going to be in my bubble to just stand on your head on my lap and put your feet on my face, like, from a very early age, I just drew that boundary of, if you need me with a purpose. Like, know that you're feeling a certain way to come over. And
well, and that like touch needs to be invited, approved,
yes, also
consensual, whatever.
that.
Like, that's a great. Our kids need to know that. And it feels cruel to be like, oh, mommy doesn't want to be touched right now, but like, that's going to follow them. You know, it's important. And it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. For time's sake, let's call this the next question's a lightning round, which I've never done before, but whatever. They do it on other podcasts, so we'll do it on this one.
Let's do it. Yes.
Kristen, do you make time for yourself? How do you make it happen? How do you spend it?
It's been a long road for me to do things for myself because I spend so much time taking care of others and other people's kids, and it brings on a strange part of like anxiety. But last summer I went away for a few days to New York with a friend, which was stressful, like anxiety inducing. It was only a couple hours away, but I felt like the worst parent in the world.
You went to the really stressful part of New York, like Times Square, right?
Yeah, just like Manhattan. But like I started going to the movies like at night after the kids would go to bed, or Mike would handle bedtime and we would go from there. Or I go to breakfast by myself sometimes and just take a few small hours in the evening with my headphones on to write on the blog or draw or read, just kind of those moments to just tune myself out. But I don't do anything like extreme. Like, my favorite thing, like we talked about earlier, is probably showering without a human or an animal coming in to bother me.
Yeah.
And that kind of does
like
it for
no
me.
touch time sounds like it's your time.
Yes.
Right. All right, Elisha, how about you?
So I read books, listen to music, gardening, right? It's about to be spring, so getting all my plants and stuff started. And then the pool is also opening. I am a pool person.
Okay. Because you like touch, you like the water, right? It's like someone's touching you. You both make more sense to me now.
Yeah. Like gardening, right, is all about me touching soil and dirt. Like, I don't even wear shoes when I garden, right? Like, I want to feel all the things. But that's how I do it.
Awesome.
And then making sure I go to sleep at a good time.
Ooh, such a good one. Such a good one. None of us do well. None of the three of us. And then the big global us do well with not enough sleep. All this stuff is way harder. All right. Next lightning question. Let's talk about our partners, keeping in mind they could come listen to this if they wanted to. But seriously,
they'll be fine.
We know our partners aren't actually going to do that. They don't have the attention span to get through this.
No, man.
What do they do? Elisha, will do you first. What does Sean do that makes you totally crazy?
All right, y'all who are listening can't see, but my signature eye twitch just came out because Lord, I knew this question was coming, and I was like, how do I answer this? So the thing that drives me crazy about Sean is that he makes very loose plans, right? So we already talked about the fact that I'm very structured.
Yes.
So if I say I'm going to do X, Y, Z, I'm at least getting to X and Y.
Right.
Sean might say I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and then he ends up on J, K, W.
Right.
Like, and then he's running late, and I'm just like, yo, sir, what are you doing? Like, can we please keep a plan and be on time? Please.
There's no pill for that. There's no pill to help you cope with that.
It's been 12 years, and I'm still just like, listen, sir, I'm going to need you to get this together. So again, as I've already said, please send prayers and coffee, because that is the only thing that has this man still above ground with this plan.
All right. And actually, so let's stay on you for the next one, and then Kristen, you can get ready. What does he do that totally offsets that? That like you're staying together because there's this, but there's that.
So two things. So A, getting to see how he is with Gabe. So for anyone that knows Sean, he's like, you know, a pretty like quiet, reserved guy. But when he is with Gabe, he is a goofball. And so that's very fun. And then also he supports my decisions again to go out and try new things. I was like, hey babe, I'm gonna go to grad school and be a teacher. And he was like, okay. And so I've done that. And I was like, hey babe, I want to also now get my certifications to be a financial advisor and help families. And he was like, okay. So that him not being XYZ does have its benefits for a person like me that constantly needs to like grow and learn.
Someone who is XYZ would have 57 questions to ask about that to make sure it's the right thing for you to do.
Right.
Like, well, have you thought of this? Like, what about that?
Yep. He's like, okay, cool. You want to learn something else? It's about that time. It's been 2 years. Sure. Go learn something else.
That's awesome. All right, Kristen. Now I'm asking about my own brother. What is it that makes you crazy?
So, and he knows it too. We've talked about it. It's the way he apologizes after a disagreement.
Is it a non-apology?
Yes, absolutely. It is. There's no words, and his way of showing like affection is definitely like being a gift giver, or like apology is more of a gift giver. So long story short, he's gotten into fish a lot lately, and we were going to pick something up from a pet store. So when we were driving, he was like, oh, we're going to go to the Media Pet store. For anyone that's in the area knows where that is.
Yeah, we're from Delco. If you didn't notice, I'm sure you noticed.
So I'm driving to where it is in Media, and it's like 20 minutes we're in the car. Mind you, we had just had breakfast with Nona and Pop at Perkins, like right by their house. So you would have thought he would have noticed that I was not going to the right place, because what he really meant to say was Clifton Heights. So we get So we get there, and he was like, immediately, he's like, oh, blah, 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 I don't want to go anymore. And I'm like, first of all, the kids are in the car. You're not going to talk to me like that. So I just stopped talking. When I'm not a confrontational person in that way, especially when it's nonsense. So I shut down. We do all the things, pick up all the stuff, get home, like 6 hours passes. I haven't said a word. I'm sitting at the table doing a puzzle, and he comes up and he goes, Kristen, which he never says. And I just kind of turn around and don't say anything. And this man says, do you want some ice cream?
And you now know that is, I'm sorry.
That's the apology. That's it. Right there. And which he was just going to completely pass over the fact of like, oh, I should apologize. And I was like, I will take an apology, and I will also take a strawberry shortcake blizzard from Dairy Queen. Thank you. But it's definitely the way he apologizes, because he does not like to be wrong ever.
Right. Yeah.
Ever,
all right.
Ever.
I could see that. What does he do to make up for that?
I think in the same way as Elisha, he's just been my biggest supporter. Like, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to have stayed home with Viv in this way. And starting back up with art, and starting the blog, and now starting this whole like content creation thing. Just again, trying those new things that even if it's not a monetary value
it's just
to the household, but it's just something that he knows will help fulfill me in a way. And then also just bringing ice cream as peace offerings. That's also not bad.
I mean, it's not an apology, but I do like it. I get it.
Right.
All right. 2 more lightning questions. Kristen, what's the funniest thing one of your kids or each of your kids has either said or done so far? Like, what is the story you tell?
It's probably Amelia. She was in probably kindergarten, and we were really close with her kindergarten teacher, and they would do art projects. And she came home and she was so excited. She was like, Mom, Miss Holly is going to send you a picture of what I made today, and I'm so proud of it. And she like didn't describe it at all. So I get this picture sent to my phone, and it's of a snake, and it says ASS. And I was like, what? She was like, it's going Mom. And I was like, oh, okay. It's cool. But it was
I'll need to talk to your teacher.
Right. But it was just cool that her teacher was so cool with it. She didn't even think that like it was in a bad way. Right. Like those things you see on TV where they get called into the principal's office.
Do you see the one where it looks like the whole family is like being hung, but they're wearing scuba masks? Tell me about your family portrait. Why is everybody hanging?
Right.
That's why I
Viv,
get curious, right?
yeah.
Don't
And Viv hasn't
assume.
really had too many of the moments yet, but she loves to dance. She will dance along to anything. If she won't even paying attention to a movie, but if a song comes on, she'll drop everything she's doing and then she'll just start shaking her little butt. And then she'll
Yep.
come up and grab your hands to like dance with
Got
her.
it.
So that's pretty much where she's at. She hasn't done anything too crazy, minus like signing aggressively that she wants me to go to the kitchen and make her dinner or get her a snack or something.
They're both girls who know what they want.
Oh,
All right, Elisha, funniest thing said or done.
So Gabe is a trip. I have all niece experience, and so having a boy is very different.
Different,
He
yes.
wild. But he had a speech delay, and so he didn't really talk until a few months ago, and it like exploded. So one night we were like sitting in his room, getting ready to, go to bed. I'm like, all right, bud, it's time to go night night. And I go to stand up out of the chair. He goes, whoa, no night night, and like pushes me back into the chair. And I was like, I'm sorry, sir. What? First off, that's a lot of words you just strung together. But
right?
It was so
you
funny.
didn't know whether to be excited or like, hey.
But it was so funny that I did it again and Sean like recorded it. So I have it on camera for like
That's
posterity's sake now because I was tickled. But also,
Yes.
sir, don't whoa me.
Yeah, exactly. I like first things first, way to string your words together. And like, what a win after a delay, right? It's so exciting when they finally start to catch up and move forward. But then like, yeah, we're going to need to get some things straight now that you can string words together. You can't string them against me.
You are not the captain of this ship, sir. Let's just be correct.
Oh my goodness, that's so great. All right, so think about one more thing. We talked at the beginning that like maybe if you knew some of this stuff, if someone had told you or you had heard, it would have made things easier. So what's one thing you've learned on your own parenting journeys that you did not say yet, that you just really wish you decided sooner, knew sooner, someone said to you sooner, that you would want another parent to hear today? Kristen, we'll do you first.
I would say since we talked about it a little bit that I have a hard time doing things for myself, that like while we're here to raise our kids to be functioning, capable humans, that is not the only purpose we were put on this earth for. If you have kids, parenting is hard and it chips away tiny pieces of you as the years go on, and it's kind of chipping away those pieces of you to give to them to make them whole, while taking away from ourselves to where we don't feel like us, or we're losing ourselves in the process to make them whole, which sets in the certain type of guilt, to make you feel like you're doing less for them, but you're not. And our one wise aunt is always saying you can't fill from an empty cup, and it's taken me 9 years with Amelia to finally start understanding what that means, and that you have to be whole in yourselves to be able to give to them and do what's best and make them whole.
You're actually doing them a favor by doing yourself a favor. I always say, like, give yourself permission, but if that's still not good enough, you're just not there yet, say you're doing it so you can be the parent that you want to be for them. So whatever resonates with you, use that. That's awesome. And one of my big things that I try to convey early on too. Elisha, one thing.
So I had something like prepared, right? But we've talked about so much of it already.
Right.
But one thing
She's
for
gonna
me,
pivot.
right? One thing for me and is there's a million ways to parent, right? So give yourself option and resources like it's a toolkit. Because like Kristen said, how you parent with one kid is different than how you parent with another kid, and how you're going to interact with your nieces or nephews, even if you're not a parent, right? You've got kids in your life.
You're in
have
someone's
resources.
life, yeah.
And there are so many free resources. There's so many, books that you can read that you can get from your libraries. Teacher plug, go to your libraries, right? Even, Erica doesn't know I'm going to say this, but like she has a wonderful, wonderful wealth of resources and knowledge that parents can tap into, that at the time when I had my son, I didn't have a ton of discretionary funds. I didn't have a ton of money, but I could get some help and some knowledge. Yep. So at least that way I could go, oh, you know what? This didn't work for me, but I now have it in my toolkit. And if another mom reaches out to me and they're struggling, well, I can give her the advice like, hey, this didn't necessarily work for me, but like try it with your kid, right? Like it might work for them. So there is no one right way to parent. Anybody that tells you that there is, I'm a cuss, is straight up effing lying. Right? Swerve them.
It
Well, you two
wasn't
are the perfect.
me.
It wasn't. You two are the perfect example of that because you are co-parenting, but you're not doing it the same way as each other, and it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no one way, but open your mind and get tools. Read books, listen to podcasts, watch movies, talk to people, because you're gonna come up on something, your kid's gonna do something, and it's better to have tools that you can Rolodex through, right? Than be reactive, and then you're like, oh shit, I didn't
Right.
mean to do it that way, but it's
Yeah.
done now.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
get some tools. Again, that's also my teacher brain. Do some research, friends.
Did you curse before you cried? Did we make it?
No, I teared up a little bit
Oh,
earlier.
She
but I
did.
had it together.
Let's, for the record, she did both.
Okay, right. Yeah, so it's 2-0.
Aha.
That was a surprising result. Clearly, I'll need to have you back. I think this is officially the 1 minute, 2 minutes longer than my longest one. So there's a lot for us to talk about, and it's
Yes,
not expertise at all, which I love. Although we've learned that we are the experts on our kiddos, maybe even on each other's kiddos. So here's your homework, ladies. As you go through life now going forward, when you're like venting about something, shoot me a text, write it down. We're going to come back and do like just a total vent session.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I could be having the worst day, but if one of my girlfriends is like, what about this thing? I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm okay. It just takes you like away from your own stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be back with some vent sessions. Listeners, watchers, thank you so much for listening and watching. I'm on a mission, as I said, to tell you this stuff, convey the stuff that I wish I knew sooner and others wish they knew sooner. I would leave you with my list of stuff I learned the hardest way, but both of you kind of touched on it. So I'll just reiterate. Number 1, your to-do list will always be there. Put yourself on it. 2, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Schedule ways to refill yours every day. It can be quick. It can be small. It doesn't have to be a spa day. And there's no way, this is Elisha's, there's no way to be a perfect parent. Countless ways to be a really good one. And that's what we should all be trying to do. Yep. Thank you so much for your time. I did not plan to keep you this long. I want to get you back to your littles and your weekends. And listeners, we'll be back soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.